Senator, thank you very much. I'm in the Hall of Dirksen between two meetings. Most of the comments and questions have been already presented to the committee this morning. The necessity of greater civic education, I don't think can be overestimated. I think one of the great losses, and I don't really quite understand why it's happened in the last 30 or 40 years, has been the decline of civics, literally civics, in the high school curriculum around the country. A couple of other questions. Does the commission have an estimate of the number of 18-year-olds in the country? If we're talking about 2 years, 18 and 19-year-olds, how many people are we talking about, for example?
Sure. Well, Senator, we completely agree with you on the issue of civics, and that's why we recommended a new civics fund at the Department of Education, $200 million a year, and are excited about the new legislation that's being introduced today in a bipartisan fashion. Right now, the federal government spends about $5 million a year on civics, spends over $3 billion on STEM. And when the government committed to investing in STEM accelerated all across the country. We think the same commitment should be made in civics. And we heard it all, everywhere we went, people raised the same concern you did. There are roughly 4 million young people that turn 18 every single year. So in terms of 18 and 19-year-olds, there'd be about 8 million.
So that's not a gigantic number in terms of providing some kind of national service option. Now, another question is this a question of communication where people don't know the availability of these slots, or are there not enough slots? In other words, do we need more slots in AmeriCorps or the military or the other places where national service might take place? Or is it just a question of there are fewer people applying, and therefore if we advertise more and make people aware of these options, we'd have more participation? Which is it? Communications or shortage of slots?
It's a little of both. There's definitely a shortage of slots. AmeriCorps is roughly 75,000 people a year. Peace Corps is about 7,000. Youth Build altogether about 8,000. So there's less than 100,000 slots for that cohort, as you mentioned, 4 million, 8 million people. And there's way more demand. There are programs all across the country that have way more people applying. The corporation gets requests for funding that far exceeds their grant authority. So we think, and we recommended that there should be enough funding to get to 1 million people a year over 10 years. But there's also a question of awareness. As we travel the country, we found that few people know about AmeriCorps and the opportunity to serve. So we think there needs to be both, and including people have misgivings or misunderstandings about the military, as my fellow Commissioner Wada mentioned. So we do think there should be a new call to service effort that would link all three streams of service, as well as increased support, especially on the civilian service side.
I have to say,
thank you for your leadership on the CORE Act, which would do that.
Well, that's exactly what we're hoping will happen. I have to say, I was somewhat amused by the new idea of service in exchange for a year of college scholarship. My mother did that in the 20s. She had a scholarship to William and Mary in Virginia, and for every year of her scholarship, she was committed to teach for a year in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So this is back to the future, and I think that might make a huge difference, either on the front end or the back end. You can do the service before you go to school and earn credits toward your school, earn financial support toward your schooling, or at the end of your schooling, you can do a service job and have a year of your costs forgiven. So I think it makes sense. It worked. It worked 100 years ago, and I suspect it may work again. Thank you so much for the work of this commission. I think it's timely and important, and I think you're going to find a receptive audience here in the Capitol, just as you already have today. So thank you for the great work on the commission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.